Imagine being so good at crime that even your enemies respect you. That's Adam Worth for you, the guy who basically turned thievery into an art form. Victorian England had Sherlock Holmes, but Worth was out here inspiring Moriarty himself, running one of the most sophisticated criminal networks of all time. He didn't just steal, he schemed, he charmed, and most impressively, he avoided violence like it was a bad dinner party. People didn't call him the Napoleon of Crime for nothing. But let's not start with Worth as the master criminal. No, let's rewind to the 1840s. Born in Germany, Adam Worth moved to Massachusetts as a kid. His family wasn't rolling in money, but he had big ideas. By the time the Civil War came knocking, Worth found his first opportunity. Instead of fighting for the Union, he perfected a side hustle that would make modern scammers blush: bounty jumping. Worth would enlist for the sign-up bonus, pocket the cash, and desert, again and again. When the army mistakenly listed him as killed in action, Worth saw it as a golden opportunity to disappear and reinvent himself. Step 1. Change your status from dead soldier to professional criminal. Easy. At first, his crimes were small-time: pickpocketing, shoplifting, the usual stuff. But Worth wasn't built for mediocrity. He climbed the criminal ranks in New York, masterminding bank heists and jewel robberies with surgical precision. He also had one rule: no violence. According to Worth, if you're smart enough to plan a heist, you don't need a gun. And honestly, that attitude kept him out of jail for years. By the 1870s, Worth decided he'd had enough of America and hopped across the pond to London, where he adopted the persona of a high society gentleman named Henry Judson Raymond. Worth's idea of blending in involved lavish parties, tailored suits, and mingling with people who had no idea he was the most wanted man in 2 continents. But Worth wasn't just playing dress-up. Behind the scenes, he was running a criminal empire that spanned the globe. His operations were so slick, even Scotland Yard couldn't figure out how he was pulling them off. Now let's talk about the crown jewel of his career, literally. In 1876, Worth pulled off one of the most daring art heists of the century, stealing Thomas Gainsborough's portrait of Georgiana, Duchess of Devonshire. At the time, it was the most valuable painting in the world. And here's the kicker: Worth didn't steal it to sell. Nope, he stole it because he could. For 25 years, he kept the painting hidden in a secret compartment, treating it like a priceless trophy. Was it an ego thing? A sentimental attachment? Who knows? All we know is that the dude rolled around Europe with the Duchess of Devonshire tucked under his arm like a carry-on bag. But every criminal mastermind needs an archenemy, and Worth's was none other than William Pinkerton of the famous Pinkerton Detective Agency. Pinkerton spent years chasing Worth, and while he never managed to catch him in the act, the two developed a bizarre friendship based on mutual respect. It's like if Batman and the Joker occasionally grabbed beers and compared notes on how to outsmart each other. While Worth was sipping champagne in London, his criminal empire hummed like a well-oiled machine. But as every great mastermind knows, luck doesn't last forever. Worth's downfall began in 1892 when he decided to go back to basics, robbing a bank in Belgium. And not just any bank, a daylight robbery, because apparently he thought subtlety was overrated. Things didn't go as planned. Worth's accomplices botched the job, the authorities swarmed, and suddenly the untouchable criminal genius found himself very, very touchable. He was arrested and thrown into a Belgian prison, which was about as fun as it sounds. Prison broke Worth, not just his body, but his spirit. When he was finally released 5 years later, the world had moved on. His network had crumbled, his fortune was gone, and even his once feared name didn't carry the same weight. But here's the twist: Worth still had the Duchess of Devonshire's portrait. Desperate to recover some semblance of his former life, Worth reached out to his old nemesis, William Pinkerton. Yep, the guy who'd been trying to catch him for decades. Worth offered to return the painting in exchange for help restarting his life. And you know what? Pinkerton agreed. The portrait was sold to J.P. Morgan, of all people, for a fortune. But by then, Worth was a shell of his former self. He spent his final years living in obscurity, far removed from the glittering world he'd once ruled. When he died in 1902, there was no grand farewell, no lavish funeral, just the quiet end of a man who had once been the criminal king of the Victorian underworld. Adam Worth's story isn't just about crime, it's about ambition, hubris, and the lengths people will go to prove they're smarter than the rest of the world. Worth didn't just break the law, he rewrote the rules. He was a thief, a charmer, and a mastermind who lived life on his own terms, even when those terms eventually caught up with him. Could you outwit the authorities for decades, or would you trip up after the first pickpocketing attempt? Worth's life might have ended in tragedy, but his legacy as the real-life Moriarty will outlast us all. Thanks for watching, and if you're as fascinated by tales like these as we are, make sure to stick around for more.